A thread by Stu Swerk. An open letter to Xi Jinping from the executive editor of World is One News, WIONEWS. While dementiacrats, like that poor excuse for a United States Senator Dianne Feinstein, are busy covering for her masters in Beijing, others around the world have the Chicoms figured out. The Chicoms covered up the origin of their virus, leading to the deaths of nearly 800,000 people around the world and still counting. And they've lied in trying to shift blame to the US and others for the origins and spread of the virus to cover up their own complicity. And based on this latest report in the New York Post, if confirmed, then the cover-up could be even worse than suspected. From nypost.com, COVID-19 first appeared in a group of Chinese miners in 2012, scientists say. Yet, Dianne Feinstein, who has been bought and paid for by the Chicoms for decades, gave them a PR victory by arguing that U.S. citizens shouldn't be allowed to sue the Chicom government for damages related to the Chicom virus. Senator Dianne Feinstein had plenty of warm words for China as she defended the nation against a bill that would allow U.S. citizens to sue the Chinese government. The California Democrat argued that U.S. citizens should not be allowed to sue the Chinese government over its alleged cover-up of the coronavirus pandemic because she believes that it could lead to retaliatory measures against the United States from other countries. Quote, "In the words of my predecessor speaking, we hold China as a potential trading partner, as a country that has pulled millions, tens of millions of people out of poverty in a short period of time, and as a country growing into a respectable nation among other nations," Feinstein said. Read the rest here, WashingtonExaminer.com. Growing into a respectable nation. Dianne Feinstein praises China. Craven nonsense to support her masters in Beijing that are getting a useful return on their investments in her and her husband over the years. From InsideSources.com, Dianne Feinstein, growing rich off of Chinese interests, Inside Sources. Fortunately, the Chicom charm offensive via compromised individuals like Di-Fi, Atlantic Council, Brookings Institute, and the usual fellow travelers around the world is failing bigly, as people can readily sift through the shifting sands that the Chicom narrative, that is the Chicom narrative on the virus. Take, for instance, the YO News network in India. I find this open letter to Xi Jinping to be both illuminating and some excellent tongue-in-cheek commentary. Their executive editor has Xi figured out. Here is his letter in its entirety. Dear President Xi, hope this finds you well and safe from the ravages of the virus you've gifted us. You'll appreciate that thanks are not in order and shall not be extended. Suffice to say, we're doing the best we can, given the soup, a certain kind of soup, has landed us in. This has been the most unsavory business in a century, and I might add that your conduct isn't helping at all. The pandemic was bad enough, and for a while, at least in the beginning, the world seemed prepared to concede that it may not have been entirely your fault, but you did not play a straight bat, if you know what I mean, and now find yourself on a sticky wicket. Play wisely now, dear sir, or you shall be out. It's a cricket reference. If I may be so impertinent to suggest that the first thing you must do is give your advisors the marching orders, preferably not towards any border towns, as you may have already realized the futility of such ill-advised adventures. Your courtiers have not been telling you the truth, not even a close estimation of it. Quite the contrary. They've led you to believe that China is at the center of the world and your wish is the world's command. I'm afraid that's not the case, and fervently hope it never is. In keeping with our neighborly duties, we at WION decided to apprise you of the cracks appearing in your propaganda walls and forewarn you about your roof leaking with falsehoods. Our forthrightness seems to have not agreed with your team, for they have now blocked us. While we suffered your intrusions into our borders, our phones, our homes, even our Diwali decorations in the spirit of neighborly forbearance, your blocking of our channel was most unbecoming and graceless. Nonetheless, all's not lost, and you're in luck that you're dealing with the land of Buddha, where people are blessed with the faculty of immense patience. So let me start by introducing you to the concept of free speech. Fret not. It may be new to you and may take a while to understand, but once you do, you shall find yourself discovering its joys. Free speech operates on the principle that every human being, communist or otherwise, Han Chinese or Uyghur Chinese, has the right to say what he or she thinks. It often involves thoughts that you'd much rather not be acquainted with, or in your particular case, would want to erase any traces of. Free speech has its advantages, like rendering water cannons and the security law in Hong Kong redundant. Imagine the possibilities. It is on the concept of free speech that a free press works. It tells you stories, ideally based on facts, that your deputies won't. Blocking it is a disservice to yourself and your people. You've boxed yourself in an echo chamber of yes men. I imagine it can be frustrating, an existence devoid of varied opinion, emotion, and vigor. Your belligerence betrays this frustration. So, as the first sign of making amends, which our persistent hope is that you want to, you must unblock Wyon. Mr. President, you like to show the world that you're an avid reader of the classics. Why, you share reading lists comprising Greek, French, German, and Russian writers, which people in China dutifully like. As a teenager, working in the poor yellow earth of northern Shanxi, you were reportedly obsessed with the Shakespearean question, to be or not to be. I urge you to ask yourself that question again and decide not to be the leader who goes down in history as the one who led his country to ruin to fulfill his ambition and satiate his hunger for power and land. May I recommend a reading of the Bhagavad Gita to douse your lust for what doesn't belong to you? You had a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to lead the largest country in the world, but your greed is whittling it away, one dispute at a time. I'm not holding my breath for you to see the point I'm making, but I'll be none the worse for trying to make you see it. Sincerely, Palki Sharma, Executive Editor, Wyon, World is One. End letter. Palki Sharma has got Xi Jinping pegged, doesn't he? Isn't it amazing that the likes of Joe Biden, Di-Fi, and the editors of the New York Times and Washington Post and the rest of the legacy media kowtow to Beijing? Where are their similar letters to Xi? The United States economy has lost trillions of dollars. Over 150,000 Americans have been killed by the virus, albeit padded numbers, and the U.S. economy and culture have been turned upside down thanks to Chi-Com actions and inactions. Yet, the dementiacrats and their lick-spittle media are bought and paid for by the Chi-Coms, and thus can't bring themselves to provide even a smidgen of verbal condemnation of communist China, even if disingenuous and politically motivated. Fortunately, many American voters are seeing right through their BS, and increasingly, and thankfully, there are others around the world who are willing to push for accountability and indemnification from Beijing. Rightly so.